The blizzard warning had been issued 3 days before it actually hit Fairbanks, Alaska, but nobody expected it to be this severe. By the time the storm rolled through on February 14th, temperatures had plummeted to -38 degrees, and visibility on the roads was less than 10 feet. It was the kind of weather that killed within minutes, the kind that made even the most experienced Alaskans stay inside and wait it out. Officer Briar Waterson had been with the Fairbanks Police Department's K-9 unit for 7 years, and his partner, a 4-year-old German Shepherd named Nova, had been at his side for 3 of those years. They were known throughout the department as the team that never quit, the ones who volunteered for the worst shifts and the most dangerous calls. But their reputation had been built on more than just dedication. It was built on a betrayal that Briar was still trying to overcome. 2 years earlier, Briar's former partner and best friend, Officer Lennox Crane, had been caught running an illegal side business, stealing drugs from evidence lockup and reselling them through a network of dealers. When Internal Affairs launched their investigation, they'd looked hard at Briar too, assuming he must have known. For 6 months, Briar lived under suspicion, his career hanging by a thread, his reputation destroyed by association. Even after he was cleared, the stigma remained. Officers who'd once trusted him kept their distance. Promotions he'd earned were given to others. He'd been effectively exiled to the graveyard shift, partnered with a dog nobody else wanted because Nova had failed her initial aggression tests twice. But Briar and Nova had found something in each other. A second chance. They'd rebuilt their reputations one call at a time, proving that they were more than their pasts. Still, Briar knew that one mistake, one failed mission, and the whispers would start again. People were watching, waiting for him to fail. On the night of the blizzard, Briar and Nova were supposed to be conducting a routine perimeter check of the industrial district before heading back to the station. The area had been hit hard by a series of burglaries, and the department wanted a visible presence even in the worst weather. It was punishment duty disguised as necessity. Nobody else wanted to be out in -38 degrees, so they sent the officer who couldn't say no. What nobody knew was that 3 days before the storm, someone had abandoned a mother dog and her newborn puppies in a condemned warehouse on the edge of the district. The person who did it had calculated coldly. The storm would erase any evidence, the cold would do the work quickly, and nobody would ever know. It was a crime without witnesses, without proof, without consequences. Except they hadn't counted on Nova. They hadn't counted on a police dog with the best tracking instincts in the department and an officer who trusted her completely. When Nova caught the scent and refused to leave, Briar had to make a choice. Follow protocol and return to the station, or trust his partner and investigate in conditions that could kill them both. That choice would lead them into a situation that would expose a network of illegal puppy mills, reveal corruption reaching into the highest levels of animal control, and force Briar to confront the person who'd orchestrated it all. Someone he'd once called a friend. Nova's body went rigid in the way that meant she'd caught something critical. Her ears shot forward, her nose lifted to the wind, and every muscle in her 70-pound frame locked into position. Briar Waterson felt the change through the leash before he saw it. They were standing in a parking lot where the wind had sculpted snow into drifts that reached his waist. Visibility so poor he could barely see his patrol vehicle 20 feet away. "What is it, girl?" His words were snatched away by the wind almost before they left his mouth. The temperature had dropped another 5 degrees in the last hour. His weather app said -43 with wind chill. Exposed skin would freeze in under 2 minutes. They needed to get back to the vehicle. They needed to get inside. But Nova wasn't moving toward the car. She was pulling toward a building Briar recognized as one of the condemned warehouses scheduled for demolition. The German Shepherd lunged forward so hard that Briar's boots skidded on ice.
"Nova, hail."
She ignored him completely. That never happened. Nova had been trained to respond to commands even under gunfire. But right now she was acting like something had overridden her training entirely. She barked once. Sharp, urgent. And the sound was swallowed by the howling wind. Briar's radio crackled inside his parka. Unit 7, report status. Dispatch sounded concerned. Nobody should be out in this weather. Unit 7 responding. Conducting final sweep of the industrial district. Returning to station in 10 minutes. That had been the plan. Quick check, then back to warmth and safety. But Nova was dragging him toward the warehouse like her life depended on it. The door to the warehouse hung crooked on broken hinges, and snow had drifted inside, creating a white slope that disappeared into darkness. Nova didn't hesitate. She plunged through the opening, and Briar had no choice but to follow. Inside was marginally warmer, maybe -20 instead of -40, but that was still cold enough to kill. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating concrete pillars and rusted machinery. Nova barked again. This time the pattern was different. 3 sharp bursts followed by a whine. Briar had worked with her long enough to know what that meant. She'd found something alive. Something that needed help immediately. First welcoming CTA. They moved deeper into the warehouse, Briar's light bouncing off walls covered in graffiti and ice. The building had been abandoned for 5 years, gutted after a fire, condemned and forgotten. Nobody had any reason to be here, which made whatever Nova had found either very lost or deliberately hidden. The thought sent cold through Briar's chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. The sound hit him before the sight did. Whimpering. Soft, desperate, barely audible over the wind whistling through broken windows. Nova led him to the back corner of the warehouse where someone had built a crude shelter out of cardboard boxes and plastic sheeting. The shelter was collapsing under the weight of snow that had blown through gaps in the roof. And inside, oh my God! Briar dropped to his knees. The flashlight revealed a tan-colored dog, some kind of Labrador mix, curled around 4 tiny puppies that couldn't have been more than a week old. The mother's eyes opened when the light hit her, but she didn't move, couldn't move. She was frozen to the concrete, her fur coated in ice, her body positioned to shield her babies even as she died. The puppies were still alive. Barely. They made small mewling sounds as they tried to burrow deeper into their mother's body heat. But that heat was fading fast. In another hour, maybe less, they'd all be dead. Briar's hands were already moving, his training kicking in even as his mind tried to process the cruelty of what he was seeing. Someone had brought these dogs here deliberately, had left them in a condemned building with a blizzard coming, had sentenced them to death in the slowest, most painful way possible. He stripped off his outer parka and wrapped it around the mother dog, trying to create some insulation. Nova pressed herself against the dog's other side, sharing body heat. The mother dog's eyes flickered with something like recognition, like she understood these were rescuers. One of the puppies let out a weak cry. Briar picked it up carefully. So small, so cold, barely moving. His radio crackled again. Unit 7, you're overdue for check-in. Confirm status. Briar looked at the mother dog, at the puppies, at Nova who was refusing to leave their side. He was at least 15 minutes from his vehicle in a blizzard that was still intensifying. The mother dog needed medical attention immediately. The puppies wouldn't survive transport in these conditions without proper warming equipment. And he was alone, with no backup, in a part of town where nobody would come looking until the storm cleared. He made his decision. Dispatch Unit 7. I need emergency veterinary assistance at the Old Morrison Street warehouse. Multiple animals in critical condition. I'm staying on scene. Static. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, tight with concern. Unit 7, weather conditions are extreme. Fire and rescue can't deploy until the storm passes. ETA minimum 2 hours. 2 hours. The puppies didn't have 2 hours. Briar looked around the warehouse desperately, his light catching on old equipment, broken pipes, anything he could use. That's when he saw the industrial space heater in the corner. It was old, rusted, probably hadn't worked in years, but it was connected to a gas line that might still be active. If he could get it running. Briar swung his flashlight and saw movement. a figure in the doorway, backlit by the white wall of snow behind them. For a second, Briar's hand moved to his service weapon. Then the figure stepped forward and he recognized the face. Lennox Crane, his former partner, the friend who'd betrayed him, the officer who'd been released from prison 6 months ago and supposedly left Alaska for good. Lennox stood there in an expensive winter coat, designer boots, looking at the scene Briar had discovered. And on his face was an expression Briar couldn't quite read. Anger? Guilt? Briar, Lennox said quietly. You weren't supposed to find this. The words hung in the frozen air. Nova's growl started low and grew, her body tense between Briar and the man in the doorway. Briar's mind raced through possibilities, connections, implications. The abandoned dogs, the timing with the storm, Lennox's unexpected presence. This wasn't random. This was planned. What did you do? Briar asked, his voice hard. Lennox's eyes moved to the mother dog and puppies, then back to Briar. I didn't do this. I came to stop it. But I was too late. He took a step closer. There's a puppy mill operation running out of 3 locations in Fairbanks. This warehouse is one of them. The people running it knew the demolition schedule moved up because of budget cuts. They decided it was easier to abandon the dogs than relocate them before the storm. Briar felt sick. And you know this how? Because they approached me 6 months ago. Lennox's voice was flat, emotionless. They knew my history, thought I'd be willing to work with them. They were wrong. He pulled something from his pocket, a phone, and held it up. I've been documenting everything. Every location, every person involved, every transaction. I was going to turn it over to the FBI tomorrow. But then the storm hit early and I realized they'd moved up their timeline. Why should I believe anything you say? The question came out harder than Briar intended. Lennox flinched like he'd been struck. You shouldn't. I destroyed that right 2 years ago. But those dogs don't care about my credibility. They just need help. He looked at the mother dog, and something cracked in his expression. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of, Briar. But I draw the line at letting innocent animals freeze to death because I was too cowardly to act sooner. A puppy cried out, the sound weak and fading. Decision time. Briar could keep interrogating Lennox, could demand answers and explanations and evidence. Or he could focus on saving lives. Nova made the choice for him. The German shepherd moved to the mother dog's side and began licking the ice from her fur, methodical and gentle, working to warm her. If Nova trusted the situation enough to focus on rescue, that had to mean something. Help me get that heater working, Briar said. The 2 former partners moved to the old equipment. Lennox had tools in his pack, actual preparation for a rescue attempt. Together they worked on the gas line, testing connections, checking for leaks. Behind them, Nova continued her work on the mother dog, who had started showing more signs of life. Small movements, her tail lifting slightly, her tongue reaching out to lick her nearest puppy. The heater coughed to life with a sound like grinding metal. Heat began radiating from the elements. Not much but enough. Briar positioned it near the dogs while Lennox created a better shelter using thermal blankets from his pack. They worked in silence, the kind of practiced coordination that came from years as partners. Muscle memory stronger than betrayal. One of the puppies started moving more actively, making stronger sounds. Then another. The mother dog lifted her head fully for the first time, looking at Briar and Lennox with eyes that held exhaustion but also hope. She understood they were helping. Nova curled herself around the family, adding her body heat to the warming process. It was working. They were stabilizing. Briar's radio crackled. Unit 7, Animal Control is attempting to deploy a rescue vehicle. They're fighting the weather but estimate arrival in 45 minutes. Can you maintain scene that long? 45 minutes. Yes, they could do that. Confirmed. Dispatch. Scene is secure. Animals are responding to warming treatment. But Lennox was looking at his phone, his expression changing from relief to concern. "We have a problem. I just got a text from one of my contacts inside the operation. They know someone's at the warehouse. They're sending people to contain the situation." Briar's hand moved to his weapon again. "How many people?" "At least 3. Armed. They have too much money invested in their operation to let it get exposed. Dogs that die in a storm are an unfortunate accident. Dogs that get rescued lead to investigations." The sound of engines carried through the wind. Heavy vehicles, multiple, approaching fast despite the conditions. Nova's ears perked up, her body going into alert stance again. The mother dog whined, pressing her puppies closer. They'd survived the cold. Now they had to survive the people who'd tried to kill them. Briar assessed their tactical situation. One entrance, partially blocked by snow. No exit. Old building with questionable structural integrity. 2 officers, one active, one former. A police dog and 5 animals that couldn't be moved safely. Against at least 3 armed suspects who had nothing to lose. "This is why I needed more time," Lennox said quietly. "I was going to coordinate with FBI before any confrontation. Clean arrests. No violence." "Well, we don't have that option anymore." Briar moved to a position where he could see the entrance while staying between the approaching threat and the dogs. Nova joined him immediately, her training taking over. "You carrying?" Lennox shook his head. "Convicted felons can't own firearms. I've got pepper spray and a knife." "Great." Briar's service weapon held 15 rounds. He had 1 spare magazine. Against at least 3 people who'd already proven they were willing to kill. The math wasn't good. Vehicle doors slammed outside. Voices called out, trying to coordinate over the wind. Briar recognized one of them and felt his blood turn colder than the temperature. Captain Gerald Voss. His supervisor. The man who'd vouched for him after the Lennox scandal. The person Briar had trusted to have his back for the last 2 years. "Step out of the warehouse with your hands visible." Voss's voice carried authority even through the storm. "This doesn't have to get complicated." Lennox moved beside Briar, his face grim. "Voss is the primary investor in the operation. He's been using his position to cover the puppy mills for 3 years. That's why I couldn't go through official channels. The corruption goes too deep." Briar felt something fundamental break inside his chest. Not again. He couldn't be betrayed by another person he trusted. Not again. But the pieces fit. The timing of certain decisions. Cases that disappeared from evidence. Witness statements that got lost. All leading back to one person with the authority to make things vanish. "Briar, I know you're in there." Voss's tone had changed, less official now. Almost conversational. "Your vehicle's outside. Your radio traffic is logged. Whatever you think you found, we can work it out. Just bring the dogs out and we'll discuss the situation reasonably." 3 figures appeared in the doorway. Voss in the center, flanked by 2 men Briar didn't recognize. Private security types. Expensive gear. Military bearing. The kind of backup that didn't come cheap. Nova's growl was continuous now. A low rumble that promised violence. "The dogs stay here until animal control arrives," Briar said, his voice carrying across the warehouse. "They're evidence in an animal cruelty investigation. They're also living beings who've suffered enough." Voss smiled, and it was the expression of someone who'd already won. "Evidence of what?" "A few stray dogs took shelter from a storm. Nobody's responsible for that. Certainly no crime to investigate. Except Lennox has been documenting your operation for 6 months." Briar pulled out his own phone, keeping his weapon hand free. Names, dates, locations, financial transactions. He was going to turn it over to the FBI tomorrow. "But I'm thinking we accelerate that timeline." The smile disappeared from Voss's face. His hand moved to his weapon. The 2 security types did the same. Lennox Crane is a convicted felon with 0 credibility. Whatever evidence he claims to have is inadmissible. You're risking your career for nothing. My career? Briar laughed, and it sounded broken even to his own ears. You tanked my career 2 years ago when you made sure everyone thought I was part of Lennox's operation. You isolated me, marginalized me, kept me on a leash just loose enough that I wouldn't ask questions. All so you could run your puppy mill operation without interference. Behind him, the mother dog was standing now, weak but mobile. Her puppies were nursing, their tiny bodies warmer and more active. They were going to survive. Briar just had to make sure they got the chance. Last offer, Voss said. Walk away. Leave the dogs. Forget everything you think you know. You're still young enough to rebuild your career somewhere else. Or we handle this the way we handle problems that don't cooperate. The implication was clear. 3 against 2. Isolated location. Storm covering evidence. Bodies wouldn't be found until spring thaw. It would be tragic. Officers caught in the blizzard while investigating reports of suspicious activity. The kind of story that made local news for a week then disappeared. Lennox moved closer to Briar, his voice barely audible. I've got a dead man's switch on all my evidence. If I don't check in every 12 hours, everything gets automatically uploaded to FBI servers and sent to 3 major news outlets. They know that. They can't kill me without exposing themselves. What about me? Briar whispered back. Not while I'm standing here. They touch you, my next check-in doesn't happen. It was a bluff. Probably. Maybe. But Voss's expression suggested he believed it, which was all that mattered. The standoff stretched into seconds, then minutes. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were the wind outside and the tiny whimpers of nursing puppies behind them. Then Nova did something extraordinary. She walked forward directly toward Voss and his men. Not in attack posture. Just walking. When she reached the halfway point between the 2 groups, she sat. Looked back at Briar. Then looked at Voss. The message was clear. Choose. 3 men with guns and money and power. Or 1 dog with courage and trust and loyalty. Choose what kind of person you want to be. The moment stretched impossibly long. Then one of the security types lowered his weapon slightly. I didn't sign up for executing cops, he said quietly. This is beyond my pay grade. The second security type hesitated, then did the same. Whatever you're paying us isn't worth federal prison time. Voss's face went red with fury. You walk away now, you don't get paid at all. Better than accessory to murder. The first guard holstered his weapon completely. We're done here. They walked out into the blizzard, leaving Voss alone in the doorway. He stood there for several long seconds, weapon still drawn, face cycling through rage and calculation. Finally, he lowered the gun. This isn't over, he said. You've got nothing that'll stick. The FBI will investigate and find evidence so circumstantial it wouldn't convince a traffic court judge. I'll retire before they can build a case. And you'll still be exactly where you are. A disgraced officer nobody trusts. He turned and walked out. The sound of a vehicle starting, struggling through snow, then fading into the storm. Briar's legs nearly gave out. He sat down hard on the concrete, his whole body shaking. Nova returned to his side, pressing against him. Lennox remained standing, looking at his phone. Animal Control ETA is 10 minutes. FBI is already on their way. I sent them a priority alert when Voss pulled his weapon. This is far from over, but we just bought ourselves time. The mother dog walked over slowly, weak but determined. She touched her nose to Briar's hand, then to Lennox's. A gesture of gratitude from a creature who'd been abandoned, left to die, but saved by 2 imperfect humans who'd chosen to do the right thing despite the cost. When Animal Control arrived, they found a scene they couldn't quite believe. 5 dogs alive against impossible odds. 2 officers who'd orchestrated a rescue in conditions that should have killed them. And evidence of a criminal operation that reached further than anyone had suspected. The investigation that followed would take 18 months. Voss fought every charge, used every connection, burned through a fortune in legal fees. But Lennox's documentation was thorough, and the FBI's forensic accountants were better. The puppy mill network was dismantled. 12 people were indicted. Voss got 15 years. The other locations were raided, and over 100 dogs were rescued and placed in legitimate shelters. Briar and Lennox didn't become friends again. Some betrayals can't be fully repaired. But they reached an understanding, a mutual respect born from a night when they'd both chosen animals over themselves. Lennox served out his parole and moved to Oregon, where he started working with a rescue organization. Briar was promoted to lieutenant and given command of the K-9 unit. Nova was awarded a departmental commendation for valor. And the mother dog, who they named Storm, was adopted by Briar after she'd fully recovered. Her 4 puppies went to carefully vetted homes, each one thriving. Storm never fully lost her wariness of strangers, but she was fiercely loyal to Briar, to Nova, and eventually to the other rescue dogs who cycled through Briar's home while waiting for forever families. On cold nights, when the temperature dropped and snow started falling, Storm would get anxious. She'd pace the house, check on her old puppies if they visited, and press herself against Briar's side. On those nights, Briar would sit with her, Nova on his other side, and remember the warehouse, the cold, the choice, the moment when everything could have gone differently. He'd chosen right, they'd all chosen right, and 5 lives had been saved because of it. Sometimes that's all you can do. Make the right choice in the moment you're given, regardless of the cost, and hope that it's enough.